everybody, and welcome to this emergency podcast broadcast of Therapeutic Madness. I am your host and owner of the Penis Mask, Mindy Vincent, and with me most of the time is my favorite co-host, Mr. Justin Areola. Justin, say hello.
Howdy, howdy. Hello, everyone.
Justin's got this great background behind him. Justin, what is that behind you?
That is the cannabis greenhouse.
That's a really cool greenhouse.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the mask off because you guys have all seen what it looks like, right? So now you can hear me better.
That's what this episode is about, taking the masks off. Right?
You know what? I love that.
Yeah.
Taking the mask off. I like that because there's like a lot of meaning behind that, and we're going to get back into that.
Right.
So we decided to do this podcast because, one, it was important to us at Utah Harm Reduction Coalition and important to Justin and I at Therapeutic Madness that we get out the message as to how this even got started, where our organization came from, what we do, what we work on, and hopefully through this campaign, you'll engage in our podcast, which we will be discussing really important things that are worthy of conversation, and hopefully we're doing it in a way that is fun and engaging. Right, Justin?
That's right.
That's right.
I think we are. I think we're fun and engaging at times.
That's true. And then we're serious when we need to be.
Right.
And of course, while we're in the coronavirus pandemic, we don't get to film together in the studio, which would be super cool to get to do, but we'll do that again soon. So without any further ado, we should probably get into the point of this podcast, don't you think, Justin?
I would love that.
Okay, let's do it. So where do we begin? I was born on a lovely afternoon, July 27th. No, just kidding. We'll start with
the gates of heaven opened up, and hands of God dropped down and placed this baby on the earth.
And then the Circle of Life by Elton John began playing. Just kidding.
Her name wasn't actually Mindy. Her name was something else.
That's true. That was before I got my stage name of Mindy. Just kidding. Mindy is not my stage name. It's my real name. But anyway, so I guess we'll start with, I'd like to share with you guys how this whole thing got started, because I've seen some comments, and mind you, I haven't seen all the comments. There's so many comments. I've never had something go viral. I never even tried to do that. I'm more of a scroller on social media, more of a voyeur, I would say. And I do post on Facebook and stuff, but I just never would have thought something would go so viral. So anyway, I was just taking a picture of this mask that I had ordered and posted it. And then it went viral, and at 150,000 shares, because while I was watching these shares jump, I was talking to my son, my 19-year-old son, for those of you who are concerned about the jokes that my son makes. He's a grown adult. It's okay. And he called me. He was like, Mom, we need to see if we can try to sell these masks so that we can raise money to get masks for the people that UHRC serves that are struggling with homelessness. Because my son is a little social worker at heart. He knows about who we serve, and I'm a person who's recovered from a substance use disorder. I myself have been homeless. I've lost my son twice because of my addiction, and my son, on April 22nd of this month, I will celebrate 13 years clean from my drug of choice, and my son has been back with me for all of that time.
And
so anyway,
homeless, like let's give some reference there, because you weren't just homeless, but you were homeless for an extended period of time at a very, very young age. And I don't think that even when you tell the story, people don't really realize the amount of awesome of where you are now compared to some of the struggles that you've been in. And I think that's important for people to understand. Like, you had a rough start.
I did. I mean, I was born into a nice Mormon home, as some of you, if not now, you'll know, hopefully, that, I'm from Utah. Utah is a place where we are dominated by the LDS religion in every way, shape, and form. Our culture, our politics, all sorts of things. And I was raised LDS. And, you know, things happened in my life and I ended up addicted to, or I started using drugs when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I spent a lot of my teenage years homeless and using drugs. And as soon as I turned 18, I started going in and out of jail. And then I had my son and I wanted so bad to get sober and stay sober and be the best mom in the whole world. But I didn't have the coping skills to do that. And people would tell me, you know, if you just loved your son, if you loved him enough, you'd get sober for him. And I tell people who've never been in that situation, they don't understand. I loved my son so much that without him, I couldn't even function, you know, and drugs were the only coping mechanism I had. And this was the first time my coping mechanism didn't work. It wouldn't stop the hurt and the pain and not having my baby, you know, and that's when the worst parts of my life ever happened is every time that I'm separated from my kid. He gives me something to live for. He gives me a reason to be a good person. You know, today I have lots of other internal motivations for that, but at that time, my son was all that I had. So I ended up getting into a lot of trouble with the law. I'm a graduate of felony drug court. I went into the federal court system. I've been to treatment a fair number of times. But I entered into treatment in June of 2007 for my last time, and I've been sober for methamphetamines ever since. And I went into the field of social work because I wanted to help other people and because I couldn't practice law because of my criminal background, because I wanted to be an attorney. But I couldn't practice law, so I went into social work. And
we spent the same amount of time in school, yeah?
I've spent even longer in school because I have 2 master's degrees. So for those of you who think I'm just some uneducated moron that's like posting stuff on Facebook to get attention, I suggest that you take a look at my profile. 1, because if I needed attention, I would post a hell of a lot more than I have over all these years. 2, I'm certainly not uneducated. And 3, I'm not ashamed of a single thing that I've done. So I went into this field, and when I first got into this field, because I got sober through drug court and Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. So I was very much an abstinence-based kind of therapist in this field. And then August 24th of 2014, my big sister died from an opiate overdose. And my whole life turned upside down. And my little brother was still addicted to heroin, and I needed to save his life. And all of a sudden, all of my personal views and biases about recovery went out the window because I just needed to save his life. And all the things that I did for my recovery, they weren't the right things for his. And so in that moment, my brother taught me what it was like to really meet somebody right where they're at. And losing my sister taught me how to love people in their entirety, both in their light and their dark, to the best of my ability all the time, right where they're at. And then that's when I became a harm reductionist.
And that's actually a really good spot to kind of jump in and talk about some of the things with harm reduction. And these were actually things that were even foreign to me initially. You know, I've always tried to love people where they are. I've really, over my lifetime, kind of been non-judgmental to a fault. But really looking at the principles of harm reduction and engaging with people and knowing that, you know, these people are making decisions that aren't the healthiest for them, and they're struggling with addiction, and we can still love them through that process. And talking about keeping people safe until they can make better decisions. Why not save somebody's life? Why not give them drug testing? Why not provide clean needles? It's not like, you know, these people aren't going to choose drugs just because they have access to a clean needle. They're going to not get HIV or Hep C because they're not sharing needles, because they're already making those decisions. And that was really a wonderful kind of eye-opener for me when you really were, you know, when we first started working together on some of the drug policy stuff and getting into harm reduction. It was just like a very much an aha for me, like, I need to help with that. I want to be part of that. And that's kind of how we came together in this space. And, you know, I've really been educated and had my eyes open by the work that you've done. And I'm very proud to say that I'm associated with UHRC. And for the people out there that are making comments, like, we're not here to sell masks. That kind of all just happened by providence. And honestly, I'm very, very happy that it did, because you have a wider audience and we can educate and keep doing the same things that you've been doing for years, now to a wider audience. And, you know, the people that are buying masks, you've enabled, you know, donations to go to a nonprofit that is helping people, you know, on the street right now. Quite literally, just barely, you were able to bring in, you know, additional syringes, and we're going to be donating masks to people that can't afford them, and working with other, you know, harm reduction groups. You know, Mindy had a call today with a group, and just full disclosure, I'm on the board of UHRC. And so we're very proud of the work that Mindy does. And yeah, we're not here to sell masks, but we're very, very thankful that all of you people out there have tuned in and shown support, and are buying these masks, because you're facilitating some wonderful tools for the community at large. Not just in Utah, but we work with national groups, and Mindy works with a bunch of groups all over. But you know, we're very thankful to have those tools here in Utah, and I promise you that those funds are going to good use. And yeah, that's really awesome that whole thing took off.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because, you know, I'm very much a person who believes in, you know, I believe that coincidence is when God chooses to remain anonymous. And when I say God, I'm not talking about a man in the sky with his lightning bolt. That could be him, who knows? But there's a power greater than me that works in my life and always has. And that is all of these strange things, these coincidences came together and made this thing happen. And that leads me to, you know, want to share a little bit about UHRC and where we came from. But first, I just want to say, for those of you who have ordered masks, like, one, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, I'll cry, because I'm just so grateful for the support, the kind words, the kind comments, and just the overall support. And I don't care what's motivating you to get the mask. I don't care if it's because you love the penises on your face or because you love our cause. I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful because, you know, when my sister passed away and I was trying to help my brother, and I became a harm reductionist, was introduced to harm reduction really for the first time. That's when House Bill 308 passed here in Utah, which is our syringe exchange bill. And I said, I'm going to start the first syringe exchange in Utah. And that is what I did. I literally went out there. December 1st, 2016 is the first day it was legal, which also happens to be World AIDS Day. And I went out there with just a satchel of tuberculosis syringes, which are not the right kind of syringes, and a bunch of kind of kits that the wonderful human beings in New Mexico gave me. Dominic Zerlo, John, like, there's a bunch of wonderful people in New Mexico that taught me a lot about the work that I do, and who gave me materials to come back to Utah with to start this syringe exchange. And for the first 7 months the syringe exchange ran, from December of 2016 to July of 2017, it was completely unfunded, which means during that entire time, everything for it, including all of the like the kits and everything, I paid for that on my credit cards. I paid for it, you know, out of my own money, because I knew that this program had to get up and get going. And the things that I do, I don't do them for money. I do them because I feel like it's my obligation, my responsibility to leave this world a better place than I found it. And I also know that I was given a thick skin to fight for people who can't necessarily fight for themselves at the time, and to empower those people, just like somebody empowered me to be able to be in this position one day, giving back to others what has been so freely given to them. So in July of 2017, the Utah Health Department had come up with funding to award to syringe exchanges. We were awarded funding, not enough funding to run the syringe exchange, but it kept us running anyway, right? So there's been, over the almost 4 years that UHRC has been running, it's always been a financial struggle, and any harm reduction organization in the country shares this pain of mine. There is bans on certain types of funding for syringe exchange. Syringes are expensive. Disposal is expensive. A lot of communities far and wide do not like syringe exchange. You know, and that's okay, because these are human beings and they need to be loved, and we need to create connection through compassion and love them for where they are, because at very least people deserve to stay alive. So throughout these struggles over all these years, like this one thing that just happened, especially in these really difficult times where funding is being diverted and people are losing grants, you know, we were able to raise money that's going to help us to stay afloat and help us to continue to serve the folks in our community. And the people we serve are primarily people experiencing homelessness. They are people who have so many other complications going on, and they just need to be loved, and they just need resources, and they need to stay alive, because dead people don't recover.
That's right.
So when I say I'm grateful for, this campaign that wasn't even intended, taking off, you really have no idea how much it means to me personally. And the comments, and Justin and I will talk about this. So the kind of work we do doesn't always have a warm, fuzzy reception.
Especially in Utah.
And we have literally been shreked. I call it being shreked out of areas where the community, when we're coming down, we were trying to open a treatment program down in Helper, Utah. And the community members,
this wasn't even a syringe exchange. This wasn't a syringe exchange. This was just to provide treatment that they very desperately need in the community. We met with judges, we met with,
the sheriffs,
law enforcement, and
health department,
local municipal government, and they all said, we need you down here so much. They're losing 2 to 3 people a month in this very, very poor,
in a county of 20,000.
Right. And so everybody knew that we needed it, and we were still shreked when we finally found a space and had a lease ready to go, and we were getting ready to sign. They pressured the owner. They offered him 1.5 times the amount of the rent that they were going to rent to us. And unfortunately, that owner decided to cave to those groups. And the really unfortunate part about that was, like, some of the people in this group had sons and daughters who were addicted, who could have very much have benefited from this treatment. And some
who may die without it, not just would benefit, but may die without it.
Right. And they still continue to have high prevalence of overdoses. We went down there, we did needle cleanups. We found, in parks and areas that the sheriff was asking us to go through and do some cleanups. We did all those things. And we were still kind of pitchforked out, and one of the comments that were very prevalent that Mindy can kind of tell you was not the backyard, but the front yard. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, because when I say shreked, I should explain. So, people, small, and in this community, it was definitely the minority. It's actually, so in this community, they have this cute main street. It's the cutest little main street, right? In this town, a few years ago, 5+ years ago, was completely dilapidated, kind of, it was still, I would absolutely describe it as dilapidated, actually.
Yeah.
And it was very run down. It's very, it's just depressed down there in a lot of ways. And some people from other areas came in and bought the land up for very cheap, and they're gentrifying it. That's exactly what they're doing. They're gentrifying it. And they don't want those people there. They said to me many, many times, we don't want those people here. And a lady stood up and said, I don't like being grouped into the not in my backyard mentality. And then she started going on, and she ended her speech with, I would just like to end with saying, not in my front yard. And I thought, and this is the kind of thing we run into all the time. And in fact, there's another lady down there, and I'm more than happy to post the email that she sent out. But the lady who owns Gallery Entitled, she wrote up a completely false press release on behalf of the Utah Harm Reduction Coalition, submitted it to ETV News. And in the middle of this community meeting where we're getting shreked, they had everything but the pitchforks and the fire. And we're getting shreked, and they're telling us not in my backyard. And this lady starts reading a bunch of bullshit and is like, oh, you're bringing a syringe exchange here. And I said, what are you reading? And she said, I am reading your press release. And after the meeting, we found out that she wrote that press release and sent it to the news and intentionally tried to read it in this meeting to scare people from letting us bring treatment there. And like Justin said, we were not trying to bring syringe exchange there. We're trying to bring treatment. I'm a substance abuse treatment provider. I specialize in the treatment of addiction and mental health. And I love providing syringe exchange. And I also love helping people get better. And without both sides of the coin, for me, I'm not doing my full service,
That was a real Carol Baskin's move.
It was a real Carol fucking Baskin move. God, it really was too. So, we just continue to pray for those folks down there, and hopefully, we're still going to go open treatment down there. We have the support of the whole damn community minus these 10 artists on Main Street. And so we will eventually open treatment down there, and this money that we've raised is probably going to be very helpful in us doing it.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten about your helper.
Thank you for that too. What?
Said we haven't forgotten about your helper, Carbon County. That's where I grew up, and so it's a place near and dear to our heart. We will come in and we will provide treatment services. But enough about that. You know, one of the things that we also, you know, Mindy has kept very near and dear to her heart are vets issues around some of the drug policy stuff that we work with. I'm a vet.
Thank you for your service, Justin.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, if there are vets out there listening, we understand, and I understand. It's, you know, you take a kid that's, you know, I joined when I was 17, and I had a lot of glorious stories from my recruiters, and you know, the reality of the situation was different, and I will always be thankful for the training and for my brothers and the things that I went through. And by all means, I didn't have anything near as bad as a lot of the guys that are coming home now. But you build this thing up in your mind of, you know, this glorious story of, you know, going off and being the you know, the war hero or being this, you know, soldier. And it's not always like that. It's hard to, you know, not everybody is equipped. You go from this, you know, kid, you get broken down into, you know, you from a boy to a man, and, you know, you go through all this programming and training. And when you get out, oftentimes, you know, I was responsible for millions of dollars of equipment, and then I go back to just being this 23-year-old kid, right? 24-year-old kid. And that can be hard to deal with. And then you finally, when you unwind from that, you're back home and you're not around your brothers and you're not around, you know, these situations, and you start looking back on some of the things that you do, those things can be hard to deal with. And post-traumatic stress is a real bitch, and it's real. And so, you know, that's another thing that I'm very thankful that we do work around that space. And so, yeah, that's part of something that we do as well. And so to tie all that back together, you know, the donations and the money that you guys have spent on masks is going to a really good cause and will be well spent. And we really appreciate it.
Yes. And some of the other things that we provide, in addition to substance abuse treatment services, syringe exchange services, we provide free hepatitis C and HIV testing, linkage to care. We have so many wonderful partners in the world. But one of our partners, Utah Naloxone, huge shout out to them. Huge fucking shout out to Utah Naloxone. We have an upcoming podcast with them that we've already filmed that will be released soon. But Utah Naloxone, Jennifer Plum has single-handedly saved the lives of thousands of Utahns. And I first met her when she put my sister's picture on the Utah Naloxone billboards throughout the state. And we have partnered with Utah Naloxone, and we've been able, and then we had some other Naloxone we got donated as well. But at UHRC, for those of you who don't know, Naloxone, aka Narcan, is the opioid reversal drug. And since UHRC's beginning, we have distributed over 3,000 kits of Naloxone. There's more than one dose in a kit, but 300 kits of Naloxone, and we have over 1,200 reported reversals. So that means 1,200 people are still alive today because of these kits, and because, you know, they were able to be connected with when they were at some of their lowest points in life.
And we've had some of those people that have met us at, you know, some of the events that we've been at, and some of the, you know, the recovery days and things that we do. We've had people come up and tell us that they, you know, they had reversals, and they're here because these kits were available. And so it's very powerful to hear these stories. And I know Mindy always is very touched when she gets somebody that has come back from these places, and they're standing in front of us. And a lot of times they're either in recovery, or they're starting recovery, or they're through recovery. And I see a dramatic amount of people who have gone through these struggles who then come back and want to work with other people to help them get well. And it's amazing to see how many people that are, you know, in recovery that are also doing the work. So that's,
I always say that about people in recovery from substance abuse disorder is they give back more than any other population I've ever seen.
True.
You know, and it's crazy. And then when you have a veteran who's recovering from substance abuse disorder, because it's important for people to know, our veterans are dying at 22 per day by suicide. And that doesn't even include how many are dying from overdose. And I can tell you that half of the guys that I treat, or that I used to treat in the residential program I worked in, were veterans.
Yeah, I mean, you come home, you get this initial cocktail, right? Some of these guys are 12 pills a day, or 12 pills at a time. Sorry, more than 12 pills a day.
Yeah.
You know, you've been dreaming of coming home to your family, and you have all these traumatic events, and you're not the same guy that left. And then you get all these pills to try and make you feel better. A lot of them, you can't function. You are, you know, sleepy all day. You have no sexual health. You know, all these things that are very important to a healthy relationship with your spouse. You know, some of these things are off the table, and they've already sacrificed all this time while you're away and fighting these battles that they don't understand. And then you come back and they expect you to be there, and you can't really be there still. You know, you're still unwinding from that. And it's heartbreaking to see. It's one of the things that I really like to focus on in my work as a caregiver and a provider for cannabis medicine in the state before our program was legal. I did that for a number of years. And it really does change lives. And yeah, I mean, it's really hard to understand what these guys are going through until you're there and you hear the stories and you actually see what it's like for these guys to come back and then have to figure out again how to exist in a world that's totally different than when you left it. Yeah. And you're totally different than when you left it. And you're just supposed to take pills and be quiet and kind of figure out your own shit.
Yeah. And, but we get to see them recover, you know, and that's the best part of our organization, is that we do get to see people recover. We do get to see them give back. You know, we have people who accessed our syringe exchange that then come back and help at syringe exchange, that help make kits, that do all sorts of things. Every year before the Rally for Recovery here in Utah, we have a walk called the Walk to Remember. I started that walk with UHRC, which is another amazing nonprofit organization here in Utah. Huge shout out to UHRC. But I started that walk with them after I lost my sister to overdose. So UHRC, we're involved in a lot of work to help get people access to resources, no matter where they're at, but in supporting them also all along that spectrum. And it's the biggest gift of my life to get to see people make these changes, get their lives back. And then even better is when I watch what they do from there. And I always explain to people, and people are like, oh my gosh, Mindy, you do such amazing shit. No, I don't. I just show up for what the universe puts in front of me. And there's nothing so fucking special about me that it got to be me to recover instead of anybody else, because everybody else is just as inherently worthy and spectacular as me. And they always have been, and they always will be, even when they're in the depths of their addiction. And somebody felt that way about me, and look where I am today. So it's absolutely my obligation, my responsibility, and the greatest joy of my life to give it back. You know, and veterans do play I've been a VA provider for years, and my vets mean so much to me. And all my vets who are watching this, they know that, and they know that I fucking love them. And I love to do crack-athlons with them, any kind of physical thing that's at a recovery event. You should definitely line your team up with vets. If you're going to do a sport, do that with a vet too, because they won't leave you behind. Right. So, I mean, I just couldn't say enough great things, you know, and so we're really grateful that you're giving us tools to be able to better serve so many people that we love and care about so much. It means just the world. So with that, Justin, do you want to say anything before we take our quick break?
Yeah, I just want to know how your mother, Carol Baskins, is doing.
My mom, Carol Baskin, is doing really good. The Tigers are doing great.
Oh, good.
And we're thinking about feeding the new husband that wore the leash in the cat suit or whatever to the Tigers next, because he's a fucking pussy. I know I shouldn't say things like that, but I do. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about, well, we'll talk about that in another episode. But anyway, so we're going to take a short break. We'll come right back, and we're going to talk with you about the principles of harm reduction, which are the principles that really guide and drive the work that we do. So stay tuned. Come right back. Okay. Hello, and welcome back to Therapeutic Madness with Mindy Vincent and Justin Areola. So we wanted to get into talking about the principles of harm reduction with you, but I forgot to tell you at the beginning that, just so you all know, we will be putting out another order of the masks to be ordered, and we're looking at them being delivered to you in about 3 to 4 weeks. So we will be putting those out. So hurry up and get them, because especially the penises, those little suckers fly right off the shelf. We open it up and they're gone in an hour. Everybody loves excited penises and flying penises. Who knew penises were so big? Oh, Jesus. So anyway.
There's now going to be boobs, it sounds like, and some vajays.
Yep. So the boobs and the
Vulvas.
JJs, the boobs and the vaginas have already sold out, but we're going to be releasing more of those too. So you can get boobs, vaginas, flying penises, excited penises. It's going to be great.
Cool.
So come out and buy them, support our lovely cause, and get yourself a nice dick face to wear. So
also
you can hashtag cockblockcorona or hashtag twatswatcorona.
Twat swat corona.
Twat swat corona. Twat swat is actually something I heard in Dane Cook stand up. So credit to Dane Cook for the word twat swat, because I'm pretty sure he came up with it entirely. But it's the greatest. But I've also heard clam jam, not from Dane, but but clam jam corona. I don't know if it sounds as good as twat swat corona. What do you think?
I think either way.
They're both pretty clever.
Yeah, they're both good.
Yeah. So let's jump into the principles of harm reduction. What?
These are masks, not muzzles. So some of you out there have talked about being offended by what's on the mask. If you're offended by a cartoon dick on a mask, definitely don't tune into the show, because you're going to hear fucks, you're going to hear shits, you're going to hear real conversation on a lot of topics that a lot of people don't talk about, and we need to talk about these things.
Yeah, and we need to talk about them in real and pragmatic ways. Right. Like in real honest ways, because we don't talk about things, and that's how all sorts of bad things happen to people when they don't have good information.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So and one thing you guys should know, the other side of the mask is black. Like, so you can put the black side up if you're going somewhere where you don't think it would, if you happen to be walking into a daycare, which, by the way, I also want to point that out. When people are like, what about the children? First of all, I care a lot about children. I don't even work with children in a therapeutic setting because I love children so much. I would go home and cry myself to sleep every fucking night. Okay. So, and I am a mom. So if you think I don't care about kids, you literally can go fuck yourself. But second of all, if your child sees pictures, if your 5-6-year-old sees pictures of cartoon penises like these, and they even know what it is from 6 feet away, then they have been seeing some shit in your fucking porn drawer that had nothing to do with my mask. That's what, number 2. So then the other part of that is, if they are old enough to know what this is, and it's your 13-year-old, right? Guess what? They're already masturbating and are well aware of what penises do. And I especially guarantee that teenagers think it's funny as shit. So just calm down. And it's not like I walk up to people's children and like, hey, I'm not a disrespectful asshole, and the fact that you guys are afraid of cartoon penises is really alarming. So that's enough about our penis masks, right?
That's enough.
I all ranted. Thanks for letting me rant, friends, but that's because some people are really fucking dumb. So I'm pulling up something from my wonderful friends at the National Harm Reduction Coalition, who they've come here and done our trainings for harm reduction, navigator trainings, all sorts of trainings. They put on an amazing harm reduction conference every other year. And in the alternating years, the Drug Policy Alliance, who is one of our partners and funds our policy work, their conference is the alternating years from the harm reduction conference. So if you're at all involved or inclined toward drug policy, harm reduction, these conferences are amazing. These organizations, I couldn't say enough about them. The Drug Policy Alliance happens to employ like 10 out of my top 20 greatest heroes in my life. Like the people I just have total brain crushes on. I respect and admire their work beyond what I could even explain. So the Harm Reduction Coalition, I feel the same way about so many people at that organization. The work they do is outstanding. They are changing the world. And that's where these they're the principles of harm reduction, and they come off their website. So Justin, should we get into those? Do you have them pulled up?
I was trying to find where you sent them to me, but
I can resend them to you.
Oh, I got them.
Okay.
but I kind of know them.
Yeah, I know them, but I want to read
but I
them so
don't-
that word for word I say exactly what HRC says, because I think the way they say it is just spectacular.
Yeah, and I don't know them word for word.
So why don't you tell us the first one, Justin, and your thoughts around it?
Okay, so the first one accepts for better or worse that illicit and illicit drug use is part of our world, and chooses
sex.
And sex is part of our okay, let's see. He threw me.
I know, sorry. I do that all the time.
So illicit drug use is part of our world and chooses to work to minimize the harmful effects rather than simply ignore or condemn them. And that happens quite a bit, where people think that if you're providing services to a group that's using drugs, that you're basically giving them drugs. And we've heard this from law enforcement many times, especially in your early times, which I was fortunate enough to miss some of the real hard stuff that you had to go through. We're not enabling these drug users. But I'd hate to tell you this, but it's already happening. There are people in your back alleys in your downtown areas. There are people in your suburb areas who are right now intravenously using drugs. They're in the porta potties in your local parks.
And we have to remember that these people are not using drugs to be malicious. Drug use is a coping skill, just like overeating, just like all sorts of things in life, right? Yep. And people who use drugs are not using them to be malicious toward other people. They're just trying to get through and cope the best that they can. And then it just so happens that problematic drug use causes compounding issues that then you have to work on those too. And then it just becomes like a big fucking mess that you have to clean up. I remember when I got sober, it was like, how do I even climb through this shit?
Right. And, something that a lot of people don't think about is like with chronic, drug use and oftentimes, and I'll talk specifically about heroin, these people aren't even really getting high. They're trying to not feel pain. Yeah. And they're just so trying afraid not to be sick. Detox, right? You get so sick, you're in so much pain, potentially deadly. And so they're trying to maintain, that lack of pain. And so they're managing not being sick from time to time. And then they're engaging in behaviors because that sickness is coming and it's like this black angel on your shoulder and it's there. And you don't want to feel that. And so you're doing whatever it takes to not be in that painful spot. And I think it's very important for people to understand, like, that's a basic human nature to not want to feel pain.
Yes, that's another thing is humans are naturally hardwired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. We all do it, and then imagine you happen to be seeking pleasure, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'll have a sip of that, or I'll take that pill, right? And you're just seeking a little bit of pleasure. And then you find that it brings pleasure that is so predictable, right? But then it also helps avoid pain when difficult times come. And it's like, and so addiction really is an overlearned habit that is reinforced every time someone uses, and it gives that relief, right? And so if people knew a better way to cope, if people had another alternative, they'd use it, So
at least we would hope so.
That's right. And that's what we try to help them do, because at UHRC, so my model of treatment, I truly believe with all my heart that if you treat the traumas of the past, if you teach people new coping skills, you reduce risk factors like homelessness, unemployment, lack of connection. You raise protective factors like housing, employment, family, jobs, purpose. No, there's no reason why anybody can't recover from addiction entirely. So that is the model that we work from at UHRC. We do not require abstinence for people to enter into treatment. We do not require abstinence as a goal for treatment. Whatever your goal is for what you want to get from treatment, that's what my staff and I will help you with, because to each their own. And you are the best judge of your own life. And my job is just to help facilitate helping you get wherever it is you want to go. And that's truly our beliefs at UHRC.
Right. And, that's something that's important to talk about. You can't help somebody get better or remove some of the negative aspects of addiction in their life if you're not talking to them or having a conversation. And a lot of the treatment that's out there right now it's abstinence based. And if you fall, if you fail, if you miss, or you decide to relapse, or you have one thing, and then you want to get clean again, some of these treatment facilities and some of these programs, you're booted. If you have a dirty UA, you're booted. And I will tell you that that's something very unique to you that I've seen with UHRC. We have seen people that show up to a group or a meeting that are high. Do you understand how much it takes for somebody who has just injected a drug or is on a drug to decide, instead of engaging in that drug behavior, to come to a place where they know they're welcome, where they can talk about why they relapse, where they can get additional tools in the toolbox? That says a lot about the model that UHRC has. And so that's something that I think you should be very proud of.
Thank you. I love that. And, you know, one thing I always say too is, you know, substance abuse treatment is the only type of treatment that I've seen that requires the outcome of the treatment before the treatment has been done to get there.
Right.
So when people come into treatment, we tell them, oh, I can't help you until you get sober. Or we say it's client-centered treatment, but the first thing we do is tell them they have to be abstinent. You know, and we have tons, most of our clients at UHRC are shooting for abstinence, right? But it doesn't make any sense to me. Why did I go to school all the time? Why do I have all that training? If when someone comes to me and says they're in their darkest spot, I tell them, well, you better pull it together first, then I can help you. And it also doesn't make any sense when people relapse in treatment, why we would kick them out. Right. When someone relapses, that tells me clinically, it's clinically indicative that they need a higher level of care and they need more treatment, more intervention, not less. Not getting kicked out and banished, you know?
Thank you.
And oftentimes in 12-step programs, when you relapse, like you're kicked off the fucking island, you know? And there's so much shame, even if your friends from 12 steps are going to embrace you when you come back, which many, many will, right? The shame of the idea that they won't is enough to keep many people back out there. So we have to stop requiring the end of undesirable behaviors before we're willing to help people. You would never see a doctor withhold insulin from somebody because they kept drinking soda pop. That would not fucking happen. But it happens all the time in substance use treatment. And it happens in medication assisted therapies too, where if people test positive for substances that would not even interact in a negative way with the methadone, and they cut them off their methadone. And then how do people stay sober from opiates and heroin if they're a person who methadone works for them, they get cut off their methadone because they can't get to group or because they're smoking weed or whatever. I mean, that's just stupid. And those are things that we have to fix because these are human fucking lives. And these are people that matter no matter what, you know, and they're people that any one of you, but for the grace of God, there go I. I have already been in that place, but for the grace of God, I could be there again. And the same thing with any one of you. You know, my sister, she never smoked cigarettes. She never drank alcohol. She was a good Mormon girl that was going to get married in the temple. And today she's dead of a heroin and Suboxone overdose. So when you think about judging people, please remember that one, you're not so perfect yourself, but also that this could be you. You don't know the circumstances that got somebody where they are, and you don't know the circumstances that are keeping them there, which leads us into our second one. Justin, do you want to tell us our second one, or do you want me to?
Since I did so good on the first one?
Yeah, you slayed it.
Okay, so the second one, we understand that drug use is a complex, multifaceted phenomenon. It encompasses continuum of behaviors from severe abuse to total abstinence, and acknowledge that some ways of using drugs are clearly safer than others. And I want to say that last part again. That is 100% true. Some ways of using drugs are clearly safer than others. There are certain ways of using drugs it's very hard to overdose from in comparison to IV drug use. Now, that's not to say that I'm condoning drug use at all. What I'm saying is,
you won't overdose by other methods. Like you do not have to be using IV drug use to overdose and die.
Exactly. By any stretch, you know, I've lost friends.
But it is safer even if you're injecting. It's safer to inject in your arm than it is to inject in your penis. And I have to really seriously talk to people about not doing dick rockets or cock rockets, you know, where people inject in their penis. Because when people start to lose veins, sometimes they have to look for them other places, you know, and that's not some delinquent, degenerate behavior. That is them just trying to get, you know, it's just trying to get well. Any one of us would do it if we were in the same position.
Right. And
they're trying to help educate people about these, giving them that good information, because bad things happen to people without good information.
That's right. And I have lost friends who just took pills. Yeah. That was it. They took some pills, they had taken them in the past, or they had an episode where they had used them before. They were used to taking a certain dose, and they took some pills that they thought weren't going to be an issue, and they didn't wake up.
Yeah. And another thing I want to point out about this too is like drugs in and of themselves are not bad. It's how people use them. And there is this whole range of use from normal use to maybe abuse a little bit, to, you know, problematic sort of chaotic use to full blown like off the rails addiction. It's a whole spectrum. So even if somebody uses a substance, it doesn't mean they're addicted. It doesn't mean independent and addicted are two different things as well. So that's important to know. But each individual is so different, you know, so we have to treat everybody that way. Justin, what's number 3?
Number 3.
My phone keeps going dark when I'm trying to
establishes quality of individual and community life and well-being, not necessarily cessation of all drug use, as a criteria for successful interventions and policies. So let's talk about that just for a second. Establishes a quality of individual and community life and well-being. So basically what we're saying is, you know, you don't necessarily have to stop all drug use to have a, you know, successful intervention or be, you know, contributing. We're going to look at the quality of your life and your community connections and your well-being. And if you're far and away better off, but you're still, there are still substances that are providing aid. And one of these things that I can think of is cannabis, and specifically to my vets that, you know, have used heroin. I have used cannabis to help people move away from heroin and to still deal with their pain. Because you guys got to understand, like, if I'm an opiate addict and I still have real injuries and pain, does that mean that I can never treat my pain again? There has to be some way to not feel pain. And so we look for things that are less addictive, less harmful, the safer alternatives. Yeah. And one of those tools that I have found personally, you know, in my work with vets and other people in the community is cannabis.
We love cannabis, the Harm Reduction Coalition. Yep. Justin and I are both big cannabis advocates, and we both worked on the ballot initiative here. And Justin is just amazing in cannabis. Justin is so fucking knowledgeable about cannabis, about its strains and like compounds and like what treats. It is unfucking believable. I hope you all get the opportunity. Like, we're going to have upcoming episodes about medical cannabis, and I can't wait for him to slay you with the amazing things he knows. Sorry, I just had to say that. I can't help it. It embarrasses him. Look at him. He's all red.
Whatever. Yeah, so
cannabis is wonderful.
Cannabis is wonderful. And like she said, we did work very hard to legalize cannabis in Utah. And I will tell you that I thought for sure Utah would be the last state in the U.S. to go through that, and we really made some big progress here.
Well, we have a law. It's totally shit, and we have like one dispensary open, and it's like insane fucking prices. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with it, but at least it passed.
At least it passed.
That's all I can say for it, really.
Some legal protection, but we're not the last state, and we're working on making it a little bit better. So
for once, we're not dead last.
That's right.
But we are in education, so if you're wondering about that, you know, we have high test scores, but we spend the least amount on education of any state in the country. But let's go on. We'll do an episode about that. But so number 4, calls for non-judgmental, non-coercive provision of services and resources to people who use drugs in the communities in which they live in order to assist them in reducing attendant harm. And basically that one's just really easy. It's just saying that, you know, we can't help people when we're judging them, and people can feel it when, you know, they come to you and they're like, and drug use is already usually a shameful issue for most people. And so the last thing they need, can you imagine a pregnant girl who's using and she doesn't want to be using and needs to seek help? Can you imagine how that must feel to go to somebody and be like, hey, I'm addicted to, you know, this substance and I'm using and I'm pregnant? That's really hard to do. It takes a lot of courage. And I certainly don't want anybody coming and asking me for help and feeling anything less than love when they walk away. It's the only way
they're going to be thrown in jail, or they're going to, you know.
Yes, because criminalization is not the answer. And we'll have a whole podcast on that shit.
That's right.
Okay, Justin, tell us the next one, my friend.
Ensure that drug users and those with a history of drug use routinely have a real voice in the creation of programs and policies designed to serve them. And this is one that I care very much about. We work on a lot of drug policy issues, We tried to do an overdose prevention site here in Utah.
Which
We are
we
going to
will
keep working
pass
on that.
eventually.
We will get that done. But, you know, a lot of the drug policies here in Utah are made by a very conservative, strict, religious base of people that doesn't necessarily reflect the state population. You know, we're about 50-50 here in Utah in the metro area. The religious body is actually the minority now.
But not in our legislature.
But not in our legislature.
Our legislature is like 90% LDS.
Right. And I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it's high. And, you know, so having these voices, bringing these voices to the table that can help people understand, like, here are the issues that I'm going through with drug use. Here are some policies that would be very helpful. And here's why the policies that you're trying to create, like our cannabis laws right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this is the most perfect example I can think of this while you're talking is like all the fighting you did for the patients, like patients access and stuff with cannabis. Because there's a lot of people who push for cannabis laws because for the monetary reasons, right?
Right.
You know, but like patient protections was seriously Justin's highest concern. My highest concern was convicted felons, people who suffer from substance use. So between the two of us, we were ranting and raving.
We were ranting and raving.
Justin, right? Like, wouldn't you say though that like without patient input, without patients running that, pushing that, it would have been even shittier than it already is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the ballot initiative wasn't perfect, but we passed it, and we knew that there was going to be work there. When it was preempted by you know, another group and the group of legislators saying that, you know, Prop 2 had so many problems. I will tell you that that law that has since been supplanted with the ballot initiative, they've rewritten that thing 4 times.
Yeah. And in less than a year, guys, less than a year.
Right. In less than a year. And you know, so much was made of how many problems were in Prop 2. But you know, the access that we have now is pretty poor.
Pretty poor.
Yeah.
It's piss poor. It is fucking piss poor. Like, I can't even be like decent about it because it's piss poor. We have, I think, 1 open dispensary right now. Their prices are out too. Woo!
Yeah.
Their prices are out of fucking control. I could go buy weed off the street from a fucking 17-year-old for less, for God's sake. It's nuts. I'm really not happy about it. People who are struggling and already on disability and, you know, are struggling with these terminal illnesses, and they're supposed to pay $45 an eighth, $55 an eighth. Fuck that.
Yeah, and you know,
don't get me off on a tangent. No.
The process of getting a medical card is tough. The amount of doctors who are doing prescribing has been tough. You know, so generally access is still not good. There's about 1,700 medical cannabis cards that have been issued right now. We know the market's much higher for that. We know that the black market presence here is much higher than that. Anyway, we're
so excited for the progress that will be made.
Right.
And it will come from patients. It will come from people who need it. Just like with harm reduction, the further we go, it comes from people who are ex-drug users like me. It comes from people who are still active drug users, which makes them, they're no less worthy than me or Justin or any of us.
That's right.
And so let's go to our next one, because I know we're going to start running short on time soon. We have like a couple more to get through, and they're the ones I really rant about.
But we'll do an episode on medical cannabis in our program here. We'll do all of that.
Yes, we're going to be doing an episode of medical cannabis super soon. Our next episode is going to be with our buddy Patrick Rizak of One Voice Recovery, and we're going to be talking about sexual health and also these barriers that Justin and I are talking about today. We'll be posting this episode on Monday, and Patrick's going to share some of his story about how these barriers have gotten in his way even after recovering.
That's right.
And I can share I'll share some of the barriers that have come into my life. Justin's had barriers in his. So, and we're all way more privileged than a lot of people, you know? Mm-hmm. So if we're running into those kind of barriers, imagine what people in impoverished communities of color are going through.
Right.
So the next one is that affirms drug users themselves as the primary agents to reducing the harms of their drug use and seeks to empower users to share information and support each other in strategies which meet their actual conditions of use. So this is what our entire treatment at UHRC is based upon, is people being their own primary agents of change. And we have a whole system of broken systems in this country that continue to punish and harm people who do not behave in the way that we think that they should. And that especially encompasses people with substance use disorders. And turning the screws on people, taking their children, kicking them out of their housing, taking their jobs, only makes things worse. And shame does not make people change. It might promote behavior change for a short period of time, but it will not last long term, because people have to change because they want to. And I don't give a flying shit what is motivating people to change. It doesn't matter. I hate when people say things like, you can't get sober for your kids. The fuck you can't. I've seen tons of people get sober for their kids. And in time, you gain other things that make you want to stay sober or make you want to make different decisions in your life for yourself, because these protective factors have started building in your life, right? But we can't force people to change. We need to love them right where they are and help promote change in a positive, healthy way. And in a therapeutic manner, it is especially important to do that. We're not doing our job as therapists if we're fucking condemning people and shaming them into behavior change. It's disgusting.
Well, and you talk about criminal justice, like, there are so many people in prison, and a disproportionate amount of people in prison, right? That, in comparison to the rest of the world. And so we've always focused on penalties and criminalities versus access to treatment and therapy-based approaches. And I'd like to see that change. We're starting to see that change in places. And we'll talk more about that down the road.
Oh, we will.
Yeah,
we definitely will. And one thing that I just want to say about that, and, we will talk about this in a later podcast, but, we have started to see a lot more diversion kind of things. And that's wonderful in certain cases, and in others it isn't, because the criminal justice system should not be the revolving door to treatment. Treatment doesn't have anything to do with criminal justice unless you have and we'll get into that later, but nonetheless, we cannot use the criminal justice system as the access door to treatment. That's a bunch of shit, and it causes more problems than it does good. So Justin, tell us our last one, which is the one this one really gets me going.
Well, actually, we have two.
Oh, no, we have two more. I'm sorry.
Yep. So this
next one's the one that gets me going, though.
Yeah. Recognizes that the realities of poverty, class, racism, social isolation, past trauma, sex-based discrimination, and other social inequalities affect both people's vulnerability to and capacity for effectively dealing with drug-related harm. So,
and as you read that, Justin, when you think about where you grew up, why do you think there's such a high rate of substance use there?
There's not a lot of hope. It's economically depressed. It used to be, it was a coal mining town.
Yeah.
There were a number of industries there. My grandfather was a coal miner. I grew up in the same town I got Shrek'd out of, just barely. But, there was a lot of hope there. And since that, this is true for a lot of rural communities in Utah and across the U.S.
And across the country. Yeah, rural areas are the hardest hit for sure.
There's not a lot of economic hope. There's not a lot of vocational hope. The hope for a lot of the kids in these communities is that they can get out of the community and go somewhere and work and do things. And so
succeed, have a chance.
Right. And so this one is really hits home. The reality is, if you are depressed economically, if you're in a marginalized social class, if you are in a class that's marginalized by racism or other things, the LGBTQ community gets, oftentimes marginalized, especially in our conservative culture. These things directly impact your ability to deal with substance use, to avoid substance use, or to have tools in your toolbox to enable you to not choose the path of least resistance, which is get high and stop feeling sorry for yourself, right?
Well, and the thing is so I've been in this position many, many times where people, like I said, when people would say, if you loved your son, you'd get sober for him. And it's not that simple. Here I was, I didn't even graduate high school. I have 2 master's degrees now, but I never graduated high school. And so here I am without education, huge gaps in my work resume, no really good work training. Coming out of treatment, I'm a convicted felon, which means that I can't rent somewhere to live. If I put yes, that I'm a convicted felon on a job application, even with 15 years of experience as a server, I can't even get an interview at fucking Denny's. And that is no shit. And so I write them if I have to. I try to find things where I send in my resume so I don't have to answer that question. But even for my clients who are going in and applying for jobs, I tell them to lie on that. Because if they don't, they won't even get an interview. And you're better off getting the interview, getting the job offered, and then saying, hey, this is my situation. But these are all these barriers that get in the way that make it. And then imagine too, okay, so when you get out of prison here in Utah, You get out on Tuesday, right? And you get out with nothing. And then on top of that, you know, you probably don't have somewhere safe to go. It's almost impossible to get a job. You've got to be meeting these requirements, right? You're trying just to be able to see your kid or to get your kid back in your life if you have kids, or you're just trying to get some kind of connection in your life that isn't destroying your life, right? All of these things play a role in whether or not, and then what kind of coping skills have you learned too in the meantime, you know, and all these play a role in whether or not how people can recover, how hard it is. When you have all these obstacles up against you, sometimes you feel so damn defeated, and our systems are just set up to make things so fucking hard. Like still to this day, with all the time that I have been, you know, in this new life and giving back to my community, none of that takes away the fact that I'm a convicted felon still. I can't have a firearm. I can't have bullets around me. You know, if I was in a different state, I maybe couldn't even vote, you know, and I have it better than shitloads of people, you know? And so as long, you know, we have to not judge the situation people are in because you didn't come from where they came from, and you're not facing their barriers in order to try to get sober now, or to try to make change in your life now. You don't know what that's like. And everybody has a different temperament too, and a different kind of ability for being able to deal with things. So just fucking love people and help them the best you can. Life is hard enough. And you know what? Things being hard does not build character. I hate that when people say that, you know, like, well, you know, it wasn't easy for me. Well, fucking sorry. But you know what? I'd like it to be easier for somebody else. You know, things don't have to be hard for people to learn things from them. Okay. So let's go to our, Justin, do you want to say more about that, or do you want to go to the last one?
No, you know,
I told you I was going to rant. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you covered that one.
I get really upset about that one, like, because I'm a social worker. And when people come and they're like, okay, well, I'm homeless and, you know, I'm a sex worker and I am addicted to heroin and cocaine. I've been separated from my kids. They're in DCFS custody. Like, that is so many things for anybody to deal with, let alone somebody who's lacking coping skills, opportunities, and resources, you know, so, and who's being judged for the work they do and all sorts of other things. So our last one, which is also very important to me, harm reduction does not attempt to minimize or ignore the real and tragic dangers associated with substance use. And that is so important because people say to us all the time, right, Justin, that like, oh, you guys are enabling drug use. First of all, you can't enable drug use. It's happening anyway. Second of all, right? And anybody who thinks after losing my big sister to an opiate overdose that I would ever want somebody else to go out and die, they don't fucking know me, and they literally can fuck right off, because I just want people to live. You know,
save lives.
Stigma driving them out and killing people, I'm going to bring them in and love them and hope that they stay. But when my clients come up and I see them at syringe exchange, especially if it's like one of my past clients, when I can see they're at the exchange, right? The first thing I do is I snatch them up and I tell them, you know, I love you, and I hug them. And then I tell them, what do we got to do to keep you safe? You know, and I also tell them, like, if they've picked themselves to death on meth, I tell them, like, and you cannot do this anymore. What the fuck are we going to do about this? Like, because if I love and validate them, but if I don't push for change, then I'm not doing my job as a therapist, because I'm not a peer support. We're not a peer run organization. You know, I am here to love you while you make whatever choices you do. And I am going to tell you when you're making harmful decisions and when you're endangering yourself and others, because that's my fucking job. And if I didn't do that, then what the hell am I doing?
And let's be clear about that. You know, we are talking about acceptance and non-judgment, but we absolutely push people to make better decisions. We absolutely push people to seek treatment options that are healthier choices for them. You know, those are the things that we are encouraging, regardless of.
But we push it with like open arms, like, come to us when you're ready. Yeah, I don't want people to think we like are trying to push.
No, I didn't mean like.
Yeah, I know you didn't. That's why I was like, Jess, you better tell them no.
Okay, so that's it, man. And I think we've run the gamut, and we're probably tight on time now.
Yeah. So, Justin, what are your parting words of wisdom, my friend?
You know, I've lost several people that are either, you know, indirectly close or very, very close. And one of the things that I see in the people that have left is they didn't feel like they were connected to the people that they loved. And when you lose those connections, or you feel like you've damaged things so badly that you lose that last bit of what's holding you in this space, very quickly they leave. And so when I like to close, and you guys will hear me say this, you know, as we close our programs is love your people. And that doesn't mean that you have to let them steal from you. It doesn't mean that you have to buy them drugs. It just has to mean that, you know, you can tell them that you love them and that you hope that they get better and that you'll be there for them when they need something. It doesn't mean that you have to compromise your own boundaries. Just love your people and keep an eye on them.
Yeah. And I just want to thank everybody for your support of Therapeutic Madness, for your support of Utah Harm Reduction Coalition, for supporting the mass and having such a great sense of humor. Humor is so necessary in all times, but especially in these really crazy kind of pandemic times. So, and please, if you're somebody who uses substances, please know that I love you just how you are, no matter what you're doing. And if you ever need help, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to us at Utah Harm Reduction Coalition if you're here in Utah. And if you're not, I can help get you connected to whatever kind of resources you might need in other states here in the US, because harm reductionists, we don't fuck around about being connected and resourcing and sharing those resources. And also, if you're somebody who has problematic substance use, please don't use alone. And please get Narcan because your life is valuable, it's worthy, and you can't Narcan yourself. So please, for the love of God, get Narcan and use at least with somebody nearby you. And with that, I just want to thank you all again for your support. I hope that this podcast has been eye-opening for the cause that you're supporting, and I hope you still want to support our cause. And if not, then I hope you at least still want the penis mask. So, and if you don't, well, then whatever. So until next time, we will be releasing another podcast on Monday, the one with Patrick Rizak about sexual health and recovery. And we can't wait to see you then. So stay mad, my friends.